mayor's remarks. I have the great job and the great honor of being your state arts director. Now, there are days where people are happy that I'm that person, and there are days when people are not so happy about that. But I'm happy about it every day. And I consider it an honor. And everybody that has spoken so far has talked about how old they are and what part during their life things happened. And I'll tell you, I didn't get into state government until I was 53. So this was a late life decision, a late life career for me to go out of the private enterprise, out of the private sector, and to go into public service. And that is what I believe that I do, and that is that I am a public servant. I work for you, and I work for every person, the 2.9 million people who call themselves your neighbors, your family, your friends, and your fellow Mississippians. And on a good day, we reach out and touch as many people as humanly possible. On a bad day, I discover that we've forgotten somebody, that there are underserved areas and underserved people who are not getting touched by arts education in whole schools, who are not getting a grant, who are not a part of some initiative, and who don't know about the creative economy, have no idea what we're talking about when we say the intersection of creativity and entrepreneurship and the arts and economic development. But I am proud of the fact that in 2010, the first tenure at the Arts Commission, before I went to the Mississippi Development Authority and became your state tourism director for a tragic but important 3-year stint, we did a study and we looked at Mississippi's creative economy and what that sector was made of and how much there was and who was in it and what was being done. And it was the beginning of a conversation about the thing that we are gathered here today to talk about. Now, I don't claim any credit for that except that I knew from my own personal experiences of buying an old warehouse in downtown Jackson and subleasing it out to artists and putting in a restaurant and a recording studio and inviting painters and musicians and poets to come and share cheap rent in an old leaky warehouse in downtown Jackson. And somehow that became Hal and Mal's, and it became what I saw as a prototype for the creative economy, a place that was abandoned and not on the public dole. No taxes were being collected, no economy was being created, and we put in a dozen people who shared a common goal for cheap rent and creativity. And we made a business of this, and it's been going for 30-something years. And I will tell you historically that there was a time in the very early 80s where that idea, the idea of Hal and Mal's, was going to be the Walnut Street Pharmacy building over here, which my brother and I owned up until about the mid-80s. And this thing that we did in Jackson, in downtown Jackson, called Hal and Mal's, we almost did here back in the early 80s. But you know, God has, you know, we planned, God laughs, right? So we ended up in Jackson. That amazing adventure occurred, and ultimately I ended up in state government, but still in Jackson. We recently lost the great Glenn Campbell. For those of you who've been under a rock or on an island and are not looking at your news feeds, we lost a great talent. Glenn Campbell passed. Alzheimer's. He had a fabulous career. He was an amazing and underrated musician, a great singer, a great entertainer. But I was listening to public radio's sort of synopsis of his life. And folks, on a good day when you die, you get about 3 minutes on public broadcasting or about 7 lines in the local paper. So you better be deliberate about the things that you leave behind and the work that you do if you're interested in legacy. But during this interview with Glenn's family and friends, they talked to Jimmy Webb, the great songwriter Jimmy Webb, who wrote Wichita Lineman, among other songs, including MacArthur Park, for those of you who remember the 60s and the 70s. But what Jimmy Webb said was that when he wrote the Wichita Lineman, he created art, but he had no idea what his art sounded like or would be until he heard Glenn Campbell record it, sing it, and play it. And he said at that moment, his art was lifted up and it took wings and it flew. So his part of the work was the writing of the verbs and the words and the nouns and the adverbs. And Campbell's part was the interpretation. So for me, coming here today to Hattiesburg to talk about the creative economy and entrepreneurship and creativity and innovation, for me, it is the next step of this journey that began in 2010 when we said Mississippi has a creative sector, y'all. It deserves to be recognized, and it has the opportunity to grow if it is nurtured, if it is fed, if it is embraced, if it is not ignored, blown off, criticized, laughed at, or not taken seriously. I take it very seriously, and I assume you do too, because you've taken a day out of your life to come here and to brainstorm about it. The creative economy is alive and well. There are many communities in Mississippi where it is flourishing. You know the list, and I don't call the names of these towns to say that, don't you wish you were like them? I'm just saying that organically, before we started talking about how to grow, incentivize, and to help a creative economy prosper, we knew, because our study told us, there were already communities deeply steeped in this, like Ocean Springs, and their economy has long been in the arts.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, that is their economy. Clarksdale revitalized and saved their community from ruin by embracing cultural heritage tourism and music and the arts and culture. Water Valley has been a great example of what happens when a town gets too good or too big for its britches. And in this case, I'm talking about Oxford, a very, very successful creative community, which has gotten so successful that there are other communities around it, like Taylor and Water Valley and Holly Springs, which are beginning to reap the benefits of Oxford growing so much. So there are great examples of this. Stone County I'm very proud of, because Stone County is a small rural county where I went to live after I was born in Hattiesburg. I went to live in Perkinston. And they have done a magnificent job there of realizing and convening and gathering around the big idea of a creative economy in a small Piney Woods rural community that I call my home. There are many examples of communities, but in each and every example, here is the truth. They found their own way. They did not follow a template. They did not begin with A and end at Z. Laurel, the story of Laurel is not the story of Ocean Springs. The story of Laurel is not the story of Oxford. They're